Please welcome the parents of Israeli-American Captain Omer Neutra of blessed memory, still held hostage by Hamas, Orna and Ronen Neutra, and CNN anchor and senior global affairs analyst, Bianna Golodgrya.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bianna Golodgrya. It is an honor to be with all of you here today at the ADL Never Is Now two-day conference. For all of us here and for so many around the world, October 7th changed our lives. It changed our purpose here in our jobs, our roles as journalists, as parents, as Jews. And Ronen and Orna, I've spent so many months now with families of hostages, and this is the first time that we meet. And it is an honor to be with you. I want to learn from you and for you to tell our audience here a bit more about Omer, because you waited for over 430 days to find out finally whether your son was alive or whether he had been killed on October 7th. Tragically, you found out that he was no longer alive and his body is now among those held in Gaza. Can you tell us about Omer's relationship with Judaism and with Israel?
So, Jonathan, in the movie shows a deep connection. As Israeli Americans, when we moved here and began raising our children, we realized that we needed partners in the community to raise our kids with Jewish pride. And we joined together with the local synagogue, Midway Jewish Center, the Schechter School of Long Island. Our kids went to Jewish camp, and all of these together, instilled a really deep connection. Of course, we're also Israeli. We spoke Hebrew at home. We have a very big family in Israel. Both of our fathers were Holocaust survivors. Omer grew up on the ethos of, a strong Israel for the Jewish people is necessary, and he really absorbed all of it, and he loved Israel. He loved visiting Israel, and we on the one hand, we saw it in him, and that's also why we encouraged him to go on that gap year. We saw his Israeliness, but on the other hand, we didn't know with what passion he loved Israel until all of this happened, and I started looking back, and people started sending me things that Omer said in different leadership roles that he took upon himself with USY, his youth group. He spoke about Israel. He said, let me talk about my favorite girl, Israel, with a passion like his girlfriend. And I think for him to land there and to actually feel it and to meet Israeli kids, that was the first time he was on a program with Israeli kids, was really to reveal something in himself that he didn't know was so strong and powerful.
On October 7th, Ronen, you described that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, serving as an IDF tank commander. Last week, the Nassau County legislators unanimously voted to change a stretch of Manitou Hill Road in Plainview to Captain Omer Neutra Way. And the county executive said in an interview about Omer, he called him a hero and went on to say, people should know about his courage. People who drive by that road are going to see Omer Neutra's name up there, and they're going to be curious, and they're going to Google his name, and they're going to find out his heroic acts. Can you talk about the compassion and the community here in New York, especially in Long Island, because you played a unique role of being both Israeli and American, and you talked to me on the phone a bit about how emotional and heartwarming it has been for you to see this community really rally around you.
Without a doubt, I think if there's one silver lining for us was to see the reaction of the community. The fact that just after October 7, while everybody were in shock, there was an organization to try and see how can we help. We got food deliveries, and we're actually getting still today, 514 days later, we're getting food deliveries to our home just by the neighboring community, just trying to see how can we help, what can we do for you. That's big. The community also leaders reached out, what can we do for you? Our congressperson, the whole surrounding, and of course our religious leader, Rabbi Levinson, who was incredible in putting together a whole response of the community. And it's all, a small silver lining, but it's major for us, of course, and that street naming is just a culmination, and we don't take it for granted. It's a real heartwarming element in this hardship that we're going through, and it's going to be bitter, sad, and sweet to see Omer's name when we pass there for generations to come.
I just want to say that from the first week of the war, there has been a group that has been marching in Plainview, which is our hometown, every single week, every Sunday, as part of a chapter of Run for Their Lives, advocating for the release of the hostages, and they have not wavered, not even in the snow or in the rain. They're always there. And for us, we travel so much in our advocacy, and it gives us a lot of comfort and support and strength to know that they are there, and wherever we are home, we can just plug in and connect. And I think when we received the horrible news about Omer being killed, which was on December 1st, and we decided that we were going to sit Shiva, at least part of the Shiva in New York, the outpour of support and just came, everything just came crashing into the Shiva. There were thousands of people that came to comfort us and share their condolences. And I think really at that point we felt how Omer was no longer just our child. He became almost like the face of the hostages for the New York and surrounding community. And the tragedy of October 7th. People walked in and they said, we're here to bear witness, 3 generations, people that we did not know before, that they just had to share this moment. And it was truly unbelievable.
It's so important to hear that, because we spend so much time, and rightly so, talking about the hideous marches filled with anti-Semitic bile that we've seen around the world. But to know that there are communities that have been marching in solidarity with you and the hostages and all the innocent lives lost is very, very comforting. I should note that the county executive also said that just because Omer is not going to be coming home alive, it didn't stop you, his parents, from continuing the fight to get the hostages back. So you are truly an extraordinary family, rightly said. And this comes as a critical time, because as we know, over the weekend, the extension of phase 1 did not happen, the one endorsed by both Prime Minister Netanyahu and Trump's emissary to the region, Steve Witkoff. Hamas had rejected the extension. Now, Israel has announced that it's halting aid into Gaza, and there is a lot of concern about what that means for the 59 confirmed hostages, both alive and deceased, that currently remain in Gaza. We know that Idan, or Eli Sharabi, and other hostages, former hostages, are coming to meet with the president tomorrow at the White House. What is your message to the audience here and to the president? And you've worked with both administrations, really navigating beautifully, putting politics aside and keeping the focus on the hostages, on your son. What is your message to the people here?
So I think what we understood from day one is the fact that we live here, the fact that our son is involved in this crisis. We have a role. And our family was saying, "Where are you coming to Israel because of what happened?" And we said, "No, we actually have to stay." And what we started to do was reach out to anybody we knew, anybody we could get And actually, a day later, a letter from us was already in the hands of, at the time, Secretary Blinken and our senator, Senator Schumer, basically telling them that there is a crisis in the Middle East with the hostages, some of them Americans, and very quickly the Forum of the Hostages was formed as a very important center of assistance to our family, to all the hostage families, and we're very much appreciating it, both in Israel, a major organization, but also here in New York and in DC, volunteers that are incredible. And we understood that we have a role here to speak up and be in front of the administration. I have to say that President Biden and his administration opened doors for us, and we probably been in the White House 20 sometimes during the first administration. And then we saw obviously the election and the election cycle and the effect, and then the Trump effect, what happened just as he was elected. And we were one of the forces trying to make sure that the incoming administration is going to work with the outgoing administration sooner rather than later. So they really came together, and Steve Witkoff was selected to lead this effort early, just as the elections were over. And ever since, we've seen that hostages started to come out. And stage one has been completed. But we are in a very sensitive time, like you said. We need to move to stage two. We need to make sure that all the hostages are coming out. We have 24 living hostages, and we have 35 deceased hostages, and among them our son. And you know, it really disturbs us when we hear that there are only 24 hostages out there. No, there are 59 hostages, and each one of them must be reunited with their family. So, having said that, we also have very good access today to the Trump administration, to people in his administration, and we are making sure that this process keeps on moving with what you just mentioned, the 6 returning hostages that are going to be meeting tomorrow with the administration, telling their stories, and making sure that the urgency is in front of everybody. Just hearing the horrible stories of their being captured and you know, the torture and the starvation that they had to suffer, and we're hoping it's going to make the influence that it should to make a move now. Get them all out now.
I think what we've learned, I mean, we didn't learn it. I think our son embodied it in his own actions, the responsibility for us as being one big family, the Jewish people, and not leaving anyone behind. He embodied that in his own act of moving to Israel and joining the IDF. And I think for anyone who is concerned about Israelis' resiliency or national security, this is the issue of the hostages is at the core. This is a raw wound. No one can move on. This goes way beyond just the direct families of the hostages. As you all know, any 18-year-old is required to serve in the IDF. How do you send your kids knowing that, you know, the country won't do everything to save them if, God forbid, things like this would occur? And before anything else, we need to bring them all back home, and anything else can come after that.
100%. And we have young men left behind, and soldiers just like our son. And the responsibility of the Israeli government is to do everything in its power to get them all out. And we are here making sure that American administration works with the mediators in the area, whether it's Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, and doing everything possible to bridge these gaps and bring all the hostages home. Yes, we gotta terminate Hamas, for sure. But first, let's bring our people back and then deal with Hamas.
And a reminder that among the 59 hostages that are remaining, both alive and deceased, there are Americans as well. This is an American story, it's an Israeli story, it's a human story, it's a Jewish story. And I have to say over and over throughout my times going back and forth to Israel since October 7th, every single time you speak to people from different political backgrounds, and they all say one thing: this country cannot heal until everyone is home.
Absolutely.
All of the hostages are home, and all of the polling within Israel supports that as well.
That's right.
And before we conclude, Ronen, I do want to ask you something about what is on the minds of many Israelis as well, and that is understanding why October 7th happened, why the worst attack on Israeli soil since its founding happened, and that requires an inquiry, right? And
100%.
you are a big supporter of that. This current administration in Israel keeps on delaying that, but can you talk about why that is so crucial to you when it comes to closure, when it comes to the families who are seeing their own soldiers and their own sons now going to serve? For any Israeli that wants to feel secure that October 7th will never happen again, why a commission of inquiry is important to you?
Well, as the army starts to investigate itself, it's clear that there was some misconception in Israel about what Hamas' role is and how Hamas was treated, and the money that was funneled from Qatar to Hamas, with the administration in Israel agreeing to it. So without a doubt, we gotta go to the root cause. Why did we do it? What was the reason for the misconception? Of course, what do we need to do inside the IDF to improve, to change, to make sure it never happens again? But we also have to combine the political aspect and understand years of misconception, what led to it, what was the root cause, and how do we fix it. And that can only be done by a thorough investigation. And we can't push it anymore. We are 1.5 years after the war. When are we going to do it? 10 years later? After the war started, let's say this.
I want to take us back to October 6, 2023. It was Sukkot. It was 50 years post the Yom Kippur War. My parents from Israel were visiting with us, and my mom came off the plane with the holiday newspapers from Israel. Have the lessons been learned? Are we prepared? So how can you really make sure this doesn't happen again if you don't even investigate? It's just unfathomable to me that it's not happening yet.
And that's not a political statement.
No, it's not a political statement.
Important to note. I want to thank you for everything you've done. You know, as journalists, it's very difficult at times to reach out to families because you don't want to hurt them anymore. You don't want to feel like you're trying to exploit them at all. But I think hearing from these hostages that have come back to say that they have been uplifted, that they got reassurances when they had access to television at times, their families fighting for them. I hope that gives you some comfort too, that you helped so many of these hostages, and never again should we have a situation where someone like Eli Sharabi is talking about the hunger, the pain, the torture that he endured. So I do want to, again, thank you for everything that you're doing. We hope that your son, as well as all of the other hostages, come back home, that you get the closure you deserve. And thank you for being heroes yourself.
Thank you, and thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.